Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, I have Rory Brennan with me from Plaster Magic. Thank you for joining me today.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah. So tell me about your background.
I've been in the trades for years. You know, my father and grandfather were in the trades, so it kind of made sense for me to go there. I started as a carpenter, and then because of need, I started doing drywall work, and that wasn't terribly satisfying. But you know, I started actually doing drywall work and using adhesives to attach it. So as opportunities arose, I saw a workshop on how to repair historic plaster, and I took it, and I had a great time. I learned a lot, and 6 months later, they asked me to come back and teach the workshop. So,
that's exciting.
I should have done, you know, I figured it out at any rate, and so since then, so that was in the late '80s. Since then, I've been fixing plaster, and out of all the workshops I've taught, I was making a particular adhesive, and everybody says, "Where can you get this adhesive?" But I didn't have any idea to tell. I didn't have any idea to tell them. I was making it in my shop and using it on my projects, and so that's where the idea was born as to how to develop Plaster Magic.
Okay, and then was the workshop that you took and then taught, was it using your products, or was it more of the more like the traditional three-part plaster?
No, they had a different. It was for adhesive reattachment of a
plaster. Okay.
But it was not the material I'm using now.
Okay.
I was not. I majored in chemistry in college, and I took a look at what they were using, and I said, well, this works, but it's not consumer friendly, for example.
Right.
And it's not transportation friendly. There's a lot of things that would not allow it to be a viable product. And through all of this, I received a call from This Old House TV show, and they said, "Would you like to come down and show us how to do your stuff on the show?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." Well, as it turned out, I was going on vacation that day. I forgot about him for a good.
Oh no.
Better part of a week, and I called them up and said, "I'm really embarrassed, you know. I said, I'm sorry, I forgot about you. Family vacations, you know how they are and stuff." They said, "No problem." All their outdoor shots for that particular day got rained out, so come on down. So I went down, and I showed them basically how to do adhesive reattachment. I also did some ornamental repair on that project. And I was talking to Tommy Silva, and he said, You get this in a form where a DIYer, a consumer, can use it, and give me a call. And so after a period of time, 5-6 years, I did that.
Right.
developing a product is just really time consuming. Plus, you have to earn a living in the meantime, and
right.
It's just like phenomenal. If I knew now, then what I know now, I maybe would not have started the business. But regardless, it's really exciting. So I developed a series of kits that, and I called up Tommy Silva and I said, hey, I got it raised together. He said, come on down. He said, I'm working on a project in Beacon Hill, and show me what you got. So I went down there, did that. They put me on 3 or 4 shows, and from there the business just took off. So it's been quite a ride. I didn't really intend to start out this way, but here I am.
Yes. Well, I spent some time on your website preparing for the podcast, and I was interested in the approach to retaining the plaster rather than taking it off and putting new on.
Yeah, well, the fact is, for a variety of reasons, which I can illuminate you for or can expound upon there ad nauseum, but retention of original material, in fact, is designed probably through default to last for centuries. And the only problem is that it comes loose from the lab. It doesn't make any sense to get rid of it. It is like literally when you demo old plaster off wood lath, you're taking your equity because it's a marketable commodity having the original plaster. You're taking your equity and you're putting it in a dumpster. Now, frankly, being an old Yankee, I find that throwing money away is kind of abhorrent. So I try to keep it. So I view plaster repair, plaster preservation, plaster restoration, and plaster conservation pretty much through the same lens. It's basically retention of material, because as soon as material hits the floor, it gets expensive. So, and the reason I use adhesive reattachment is because it glues the plaster onto the wood lath, using the wood lath subsurface to reinforce the cracks and the weak areas. And there's nothing you can do there's nothing you can apply to the surface that will reinforce it any better.
Right.
I mean, it's all, anything on the surface depends on the paint adhesion to hold it all together. And I don't know if you worked in old houses before, but paint adhesion is not all it's cracked up to be. You're talking about something that's 4 or 5 mils thick. That's that's not structural. So anyway, so I took the structural approach, and so there it just makes most sense to do that. Now, the other thing is about why I don't do remove and replace is that there's nothing you can put up that's as good or better. In order to repair plaster, you don't need to know how to plaster. The plastering is done 100 years ago. You don't need to know how to do that again. All you have to do is glue the weak spots. The rest of it takes care of itself, and there you go. And this is the solution is so elegant and so simple, so straightforward that literally anybody can do it.
Yes. Yeah. I was just going to say I agree with you on the. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with you on the retention of the historic fabric, because the historic materials are what make the building special. And if you remove that and put modern, even if it's modern traditional material, it does change the building. So I definitely agree with that approach.
Absolutely. For example, you have a story-and-a-half cape. Let's say somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet, including the story-and-a-half. You've got anywhere from 7 to 8.5 tons of material, of plaster, holding that frame down on that foundation. And it inhibits sound transmission. It inhibits vibration, from either from traffic going by or windstorms.
Right.
It increases the solidity of the architecture of your home, tenfold. And this is why real estate agents will always tell you that a plastered house is way more sellable than a sheetrock house. Now, because sheetrock, again, you're talking about, a third of the weight.
Right.
And it's not integral to the building. It's just kind of applied to the building. And again, if you don't deal with all the systems, for example, sheetrock is designed to go into houses that have plywood sheathing, and most plaster houses have board sheathing. Now, what that does is the plywood is modular, reinforced, cross-graining, and that holds everything pretty good from racking. And so you can put sheetrock up because it's not structural. But if you have board and you put in your board sheathing and you put in sheetrock, that thing's moving all over the place. And again, you'll find that the seams need to be retaped or they'll crack within 5 years. Look at the track record. Anyway, plaster's been around for hundreds of years. Sheetrock's been around for decades. So,
right.
And the other thing is, even modern plasters. For example, people call thin coat or veneer plaster. They call that plaster. Well, it's no more plaster than a wood veneer is real wood.
Right.
It's still sheetrock with a fancy coating, which is it's good. It's better than sheetrock, but it's not everything it's cracked up to be. Then even the difference in material between historic plaster and when I say historic, I'm talking about pre-20s and stuff like that.
Right.
That is, generally speaking, it's made from lime.
Yes.
As a binder, as opposed to gypsum. Now, the way and their longevity and everything about them gives certain results from the properties. For example, when gypsum sets, it's one crystal makes another crystal makes another crystal. They interlock, and it's very rigid. Okay, and it's very porous because these crystals are not really overlapping.
Right.
So when it sets, that's the size it is. That's the shape it is. That's it. You don't get any do-overs. That's it. With lime, it's like it's like all the crystals are dependent on carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to crystallize, and so they're not dependent on the crystal next to them, so they don't have that kind of attachment. So they have the ability to move past each other. So it results in a flexible material, and I'm being relative here when you're talking flexible. I mean, after 150 years, you get to be 150 years, you're going to have a few cracks. It's like, geez. Yeah.
Right.
So it makes good sense, and everybody's talking about energy conservation today. But the built structure, including plaster, that's an investment. You take it out, and even if you put in new lime plaster, you still have lost the investment of time. And time is something that many people, when they deal with houses, don't take into consideration.
Yeah. I agree.
How long the materials last? How long have the materials lasted? When you're putting it in, when you put something in, how long is it going to last? Are you going to have to replace it? Are you going to send the money to a factory hundreds of miles away, or are you going to rely on somebody in your neighborhood to deal with it? So there's a whole lot of things involved in preservation work, and I think it's important to pay attention and retain what you can. And there's ways to do things that are non-invasive. You just have to think things through from beginning to end.
I agree with you, and I think that that's the approach that most people should take. I try to encourage people. When we do presentations and I talk about the Secretary of Interior standards, I say, the bottom line to all of that is don't do anything to the house that can't be undone. Don't do anything to damage it. Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you that. I agree with that by and large. When it comes to adhesive reattachment for plaster, you better make sure it's in exactly the position you want it, because that's it.
Oh, yeah. It's going to stay.
But the good news is I have two examples, and they both involve earthquakes. A few years ago there was an earthquake centered in Maine, and a customer of mine basically was right over the epicenter and had just finished doing his whole house. And he said nothing recracked. And this has nothing to do with the material because it's very flexible. The adhesive is built to move and give. It has a tremendous memory, but it's still built to, designed specifically for that cushion, that flexible cushion in there. When you think about flexible cushions, think about your spinal column and those cushions in your vertebrae. It's built to move and cushion the articulations in your house. And there was another woman who had just finished a house out in California right before their big one, in San Francisco of all places. And she said none of the repairs she did had one issue, no cracks whatsoever.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, it's testimony not to just to Plaster Magic and the specific properties of the material, but it's also a testament to the design parameters of the historic building.
Right.
They're built to move. They have articulations, whether it's fieldstone foundation or masonry unit foundations or post and beam or balloon framing or board sheathing or wood lath and plaster. All these things move, and it's better to move a little bit than it is to fall down.
Right.
But the one thing we forget about a lot of the historic properties is that the ones that are around, those are the survivors. Those are the ones that are built good. Over the years, there's contractors that are good, bad, medium, and indifferent. And the bad contractors, all those houses are compost now. They're all falling down or burned or some damn fool thing. And so
that's very true. Yeah.
The ones that are around are survivors. They, and people took care of them, and that's what makes the ones that exist so unique and so worthy of saving.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you because people haven't changed. There were a variety of building and quality standards even then.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about it being an adhesive, but explain to me your products and then how it works.
Okay, it's easy enough. So I tried to make it as simple as possible. Because one thing I've noticed from over the decades of teaching workshops is that if it's not convenient, people will go back to whatever knowledge they came with when they walked through the door, and they'll forget all about the workshop. So we had to make it convenient. So the basic tenet is that when you have a crack. And it doesn't matter where the crack is. In plaster, that's basically kind of separating two pieces of plaster, right? So they're separated by a crack. Now, sometimes there's hair bridging it, so this is an important one. Never open up the crack, because the crack oftentimes will have hair bridging it and reinforcing it, and when you open up the crack, you rend that hair or fiber and weaken it. So anyway, that was just an aside. So you have these two pieces of plaster separated by the crack. The idea is to drill holes to allow you to inject the adhesive, attaching the plaster to the lath so the lath will bridge the gap. Now the structural strength of that wood lath is tremendous. So I had to design an adhesive system that would work in what is essentially a very aggressive environment. It's dirty, it's gritty, it's all the things that every construction adhesive say on their first instruction. Surfaces must be clean and free of dirt and debris and oil and all this kind of crap,
Right.
So you had to satisfy those conditions because inside a wall of historic buildings, there's, like I said, there's grit, there's dirt,
right.
Corn cobs,
whatever got thrown in there. Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on. Anyway,
yeah.
So people are so inventive when they put stuff in. So anyway, short story is that had to do a couple things. First of all, I developed this material, a water-based consolidant. And I refer to it as conditioner because the adhesive has to have a firm foundation to adhere to. And so what this conditioner does, it not only consolidates the surface, but it actually penetrates up to anywhere between an eighth of an inch and a quarter of an inch into the plaster and the wood lath.
So you're consolidating the plaster and the lath.
Yeah. I mean, the
okay.
lath, of course, is not as porous as the plaster.
Right.
So but it does take care of the surface grit and debris and gives a real solid surface. So and within that hole, that injection port that you've drilled in the plaster, that's where you inject the adhesive. Now, initially I had a spray bottle for the conditioner and just kind of squirted in there and kind of flood things. Now I've included a dental syringe in the kits that allow you to inject the conditioner laterally and direct it better. So you get better coverage. And the adhesive is loaded into caulking cartridges. Why reinvent the wheel when you got the delivery system's already there? And so you just basically you have the 3/16 hole. You seat the cartridge into the hole, and you inject the adhesive. And if it's more than 3/16 of an inch away from the lath, then you clamp it into nice soft contact, and you wait. Depending on temperature, anywhere from 24 hours to 48 hours, longer if it's colder, and then you pull the clamps out, basically the screws and plastic washers, and what you're left with are these little tiny 3/16 holes, and you could fill them up with joint compound, and that's it. You're done.
Right.
I finish things out with, I don't sand anything, I finish things out with a sponge.
Yeah.
Because I don't like dust, and drywall dust is everywhere.
It does. That's how my husband finishes too, is with a wet sponge rather than sanding.
Again, I must be the world's laziest man because there's just, if it sounds like a lot of work, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to figure out a way to do it right. And so that's it. So that's how simple that is.
Yeah, and that's much less. It's much less work, and it's much less invasive than like taking loose plaster down and put it. It seems like a much
Even people using metal screws and washers, those are very hard, rigid points of attachment and prone to fracture. This acrylic adhesive, again, like I said before, it flexes and moves with the building, and even again putting stuff on top is it looks good. You're hiding the problem, but you're not fixing the problem.
You haven't attached.
The problem is a plaster attachment to the lath. That's the only thing that's wrong with the plaster.
Right.
Sometimes you get water damage and stuff, but 99.9% of it is all attachment to of the plaster to the lath.
I agree with you on that. So how who is your typical customer? Is it somebody like doing it themselves, or is it a contractor? Is it a mixture?
Well, by and large, you're going to love this one. By and large, it's DIYers, and if the people aren't DIYers, they're forcing their contractors to use this. And I've heard more people getting in fights with the contractors about using this material. Even though, so I used to go to I used to do plaster repair contracting and stuff.
Right.
So I would bring this to the table, and I'd say to other guys over there, say, this method will allow you to repair plaster in half of the time or less. I said you could either charge the same amount of money as you've always charged, make twice as much money, or you can charge, save the customer some money, and
right.
get a lot more work. You pick. But this is definitely a value-added money making approach to things. And the biggest response I got was, "That's not the way my grandfather did it. That's not the way my father did it, and that's not the way I'm doing it."
Oh, goodness.
Okay, this is the reason that so many things have gone out of fashion, is because people get stuck from not wanting to try anything that's regardless of
right.
its effectiveness.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that if there's a solution that can help preserve the historic fabric and also, gives you good quality, if the repair is equal or better, I think it seems like a good solution to me. People are very resistant to change.
Oh yeah, they certainly are, and you can also be a very light touch. That you're basically tacking the plaster and reinforcing it where it's weak, and leaving it alone where there's no issues. I mean, I got a variety of videos that will point out how to determine that. But it's like I've had people start in one room in their house and they go, "I love this stuff." They go through the whole house. They finish their house and then they go back to the first room and said, "I could do better," and then they do it again. Now, that's the thing about it is, if for some odd reason you have something structural going on, or you have some sort of weight distribution issues, and any number of things, you like get
right.
water in the soil around the house, and causing the soils to swell and move, and or you get rising damp, any number of different things. If you have to go do it over, it's easy to do it over and reinforce it. This works on wood lath. It works on masonry. Anytime there's historic plaster around, it can be saved, and relatively simply.
Oh, very, very good. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about the masonry, because we have a lot of, and we're in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of stone houses or brick houses even that have the plaster, at least on the exterior walls, right on the masonry. So
right on the brick or stone. Yeah, you bet. And,
yeah.
And all that can be fixed too. But you can't put modern plaster on it, because modern plaster will suffer the effects of water transpiration.
Right.
And then if people take they got transpiration issues, and then somebody puts a film type paint on it. Well, then they're just asking.
Then they're trapping it.
It's like you go cascading down this route, or you take a traditional approach to it,
right?
Which is just do exactly what needs to be done. Don't do any more. Don't do any less.
Right. Right.
Focus on what you're doing, and it helps to know. Of course, I can look at this. I can sit back and after working in this field for decades, and just go, "Oh yeah, hey, just do this and that. It's so simple." But I keep forgetting. It's been over 35 years, but we don't want to talk about the first 5 years, because that was a learning experience,
Right.
But
yeah. I know you mentioned your appearances on This Old House. Were there any other notable projects that you've been involved with?
I have been so local. Again, so I told you about the first workshop I took, and it was being taught by a nationally recognized architectural conservator, and he's the one that said told him to get me up there to teach it because I could figure it out. And he was so we taught the first couple together, and he was kind enough to invite me on some teams, some national conservation projects that I was low man on the totem pole. I just didn't know, but I was very lucky. That works. Luck works. I was so what that meant was here I am with all these nationally recognized people, and everybody would go out to eat dinner and stuff at night, and they tell war stories, and they wouldn't tell. These people are so accomplished in their fields, they wouldn't tell war stories about, oh, look at me, look at how good I am, look at everybody else, because everybody else could go, you're not, you can't. They didn't do that because they were, again, so accomplished.
Right.
What they did do is they tell stories about their mistakes and how they fixed them. And I got to tell you, that was one big education for me.
Oh, yes. That's huge.
You can't get anywhere else.
Yes.
And so I'm very, very fortunate to think about that. But these days I worked with one of the best ornamentalists in the country for about 13 years. That was just wonderful. And so I have now. I don't really do much contracting work now, just if it really appeals to me. I mean, there was a house down in Mississippi that I put up 3 6-foot medallions for. That was just they were really cool. I mean, I always wanted to do something like that. And these are huge medallions that apply to the ceiling and stuff. I liked it a lot. Then locally, there was a couple of years ago, there was a project, again, ceiling medallions. There was Second Empire House, and they were redoing the whole thing for a school, and they were redoing the whole interior and stuff, so they took out all this stuff. So they asked me to come in, save the ornamental ceiling medallions, and redo them. And they said, "Can you put the original ones back up?" And I said, "I don't think so. They have so many paint issues, and they'll come down in pieces." So I got enough models together to be able to reproduce the design, and I installed them where I wanted it. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. And then last summer, here in Vermont, there was a 18th century, very valuable 18th century meeting house. I think it's the oldest continually used meeting house or public building in Vermont. And I did a conservation project there, and that was great because somewhere between at some point in history they put a kind of a wash on the walls, but because of what we were doing and doing the adhesive reattachment and using a light touch, we wound up washing some of the wash off the walls, and we were literally seeing 150 years of graffiti.
Oh my goodness!
Unbelievable stuff. That little wisecracker was sitting bored with a sermon, and he was writing stuff on the wall. Carving their initials in the pews. It was like
right.
So to do this project, I had to I had to basically build a flooring system to work off. To put it bluntly, it was a custom-built, non-invasive scaffolding to access all of the walls and ceilings, and
right.
That in and of itself is pretty interesting, because you have to. It's not something you can train for. You just have to look around and see what's there and see how you can deal with it.
Right.
It's a lot of fun. So special projects. I like special projects like that.
Yes. It's That's one thing about preservation.
I was fortunate enough to work last summer, in that conservation project at the meeting house with a gentleman from from England who was you know, we looked at each other. It's like he does exactly. He's a little bit younger than me, but we do exactly the same thing. There's not many people that do this. You know, we have the same kind of training, the same kind of knowledge base, the same approach to everything. And I had never seen this guy before you know, this project, and we got along great, and we did everything exactly the same. It's like I'm going, wow, how do you find people like this? And it's like they just show up sometimes, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's always I feel like it's always affirming when you meet people that have the same worldview as you when you're in a minority opinion.
Yeah. You nailed it right on the head. You know, you start threatening people's worldview, and they get kind of cranky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Is there anything else you'd rather like to?
Well, I was gonna ask you. Was there anything that you thought of maybe while we were talking that I didn't think to ask you about, or do you feel like you shared everything that you?
I think we've covered you know, techniques, the fact that it's economically sound, and anybody can do it. Jeez, you know, this is not rocket science. It's just using your brain. And
right.
I know some people don't do that, but I tried to make videos and produce literature that will suggest how to do things. You know, in many respects, my Plaster Magic isn't exactly how you know, it's taught in, you know, in master's programs and stuff like that. But you know, again. You have to look at the 99% rule. You know, I think
right.
I'd rather save 99% of that plaster out there by circumstances that weren't necessarily academically pure. But you know, we'll get, you know, if you retain the plaster, we get to go back and fight another day. You know?
Yeah, I agree with you. So how can our listeners contact you?
Well, a website, of course, Plaster Magic. We have you can email info@plastermagic.com, and you could call the office number and leave a voicemail because these days we're pretty busy. So 802-254-1330. That's the leave a voicemail, and if you need to talk to somebody, then leave a time that it's good to call, and you know, usually we get back to people within 48 hours or so. But it's we're a small operation. People we try to take we don't cut people off. You know, we only got 5 minutes to talk to you about your problem. You know, I'll sit there, you know, I spend all day on the phone. I'll talk to people as long as they want to talk to them. You know, as long as I got questions, I'll sit there because that's, you know, for us it's all about customer service. We want to make sure that you have a great experience. And whatever it takes, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
And as far as the side benefit of that is you get to repair your plaster and do a good job, because when the customers, you know, most of them DIYers, when they do a good job and they're satisfied, that makes us look good. And you know, that's all part of it, I guess.
Yes, it is. And people who love their old houses tend to know other people who love their old houses. So I'm sure that helps your word of mouth too.
Yeah, the organic growth is great. Yeah. Thank goodness for the internet, you know, because when the isolation started, then everybody was getting stuff shipped to them, and we didn't stop for 1 minute.
Right.
You know, I know a lot of businesses didn't fare so well, but we were fine.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that too. But yeah, some of the industries, I really feel for them.
Yeah, you know, it's got to be. Well, you know, I think, you know, now things are tapering off a little bit, but I still think it's good. For us, it's because everybody was home with no place to spend money. They were spending money on us, and,
right.
Which was great, you know. But I think that it gave a real boost to our organic growth, and I think it'll help considerably. You know, I like getting the word out there. I like people can save things. You know, there's 20 million homes that were built with this kind of interior structure with lath and plaster. 20 million homes. So even if you take I don't know, 20,000 of those, or just a million of them. I mean,
right.
Homes. I mean, that's a whole lot of houses. That's a whole lot of
that
people.
is.
And not to mention town halls and libraries and meeting houses.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot out there. You really. Again, I believe the organic growth is the best way to reach everybody. You be as helpful and sincere as you can, and everything takes on a life of its own. And I think that we're going to wind up saving a lot of plaster.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.